Dynamic search campaigns have literally been the talk of the town, mainly because they're the newest form of search campaigns a lot of e-commerce store owners are trying, and also because dynamic search campaigns have been the reason why I've been able to get a 100+x ROAS within the past few weeks to the past few months. And I'm not joking about this, because if you look on my screen right over here, we have this specific campaign chosen, which is a dynamic search campaign, and it's been running for quite some time now. We're looking at the all-time worth of data, but it has been running at a $30 a day budget. And this campaign actually is under one of my clients' ad accounts under my agency, Yoru Marketing. This specific client lives in Canada. However, their e-commerce brand runs within the US. If we look at this dynamic search campaign, we can see that so far it has spent about $130 in total. That means it's been running for about 14 to 15 days only. And if we look at the main results right over here, so conversion value over cost, meaning the ROAS, we can see the ROAS has been a 97.82. Now, a few days ago, I did make a quick short video about this, and at that time, this was running at 110x ROAS. So within the past few days, it has dropped just a bit, but that's just basically Google performing as it usually does, the algorithm showing this campaign now to a wider audience, which often lowers the amount of ROAS it's getting. But if we look at the last 30 days worth of data for this campaign, we can see that within the last 30 days, it has been running at a 27.61x ROAS. And within the last 14 days alone, this campaign has been running at a 25x ROAS. Not anywhere close to the 90x ROAS, but that was because initially this campaign got some pretty big returns and some pretty big sales. But even then, if we look at the ROAS, it's much higher, about 2 times higher than the next best performing campaign, which is this one right here at a 13.82 ROAS. So that means dynamic search campaigns are something you should definitely look into advertising if you already haven't started doing so. But before we start talking about exactly how to set up a dynamic search campaign, some key pointers regarding dynamic search campaigns, it's important to know exactly what a dynamic search campaign is. So for those of you that don't know, a dynamic search campaign is basically a campaign with automatic generation of ad copies. So what that means is if you start a dynamic search campaign for certain collections within your overall website, the search campaign will now start showing for whoever searches within that collection. For example, if you have a collection on your website called 3D printers, this dynamic search campaign, whenever somebody types in one of the main keywords or maybe directly that product which you sell or a model number, etc., this dynamic search campaign will display for that given product. But it does not stop there, because now that you are targeting the entire collection, this dynamic search campaign, if somebody types in another model number and if your search campaign wins that auction, that specific ad will be shown to that individual as a search ad. So the actual headline of that ad copy, the actual description, some parts of it at least, will be automatically generated based on certain criteria which you set it up with. So this is the beauty of a dynamic search campaign. Think of it as like a dynamic product ad with Facebook ads, specifically those which you use for retargeting. What happens is when somebody abandons their carts and you have a dynamic product campaign running, what's going to happen is whatever the product they abandoned, they're going to now start seeing that product as a carousel ad from your store. So that's exactly what is happening over here. And that's why dynamic search campaigns, especially if you have collections on your website, you're not just like a one product store, do so well. And I'm going to show you a very quick example of exactly what a dynamic search campaign might look like. Now, this specific example is not directly indicating that it is a dynamic search campaign, but if you see on my screen right here, what I did is I went ahead and searched up for the 3D printer, but specifically typed a brand of the 3D printer. And what I saw for a search campaign was this specific product right over here. Now, because I typed in the brand name itself, that might be the main reason why this specific search ad came up. However, let's forget for 1 second that this is actually a real brand, and let's think of this as an actual model number. So that's essentially how a dynamic search campaign would work. If somebody typed in the main keyword related to that product and then one type of model number that you sell, for example, this one right here even, then if that specific product comes up like it did right over here, then that means that is a dynamic search campaign. And this could very well be a dynamic search campaign, because as you saw, the model number comes up right over here, and then they have the main keyword right at the very end. And as you can see from the original search we did, this specific search ad is much different. For now, this is not an actual search ad, but if it was a dynamic search ad, then this would be displayed as an ad actually coming at the very top. But that's essentially how dynamic search campaigns work. very useful and something you should definitely have. Now, in terms of how you actually win the auctions with dynamic search campaigns, the overall strategy and basically how the dynamic search campaign itself works is very similar to a normal search campaign. Basically, every time somebody searches for a given keyword or a given model number with a dynamic search campaign, your ads go inside an auction. And based on your overall quality score, which is again determined by your CTR, by your bids, and by the overall landing page relevance, is how you win those auctions, because again, that is what influences your quality score. So again, very similar to a normal search ad, but a dynamic search campaign, I believe personally in 2022 and onwards, is very hands-off, sort of like a smart shopping campaign for the shopping campaign segment, but definitely something you need to have. But let's start talking about exactly what kind of store should be utilizing a dynamic search campaign before we go on and actually set up a real dynamic search campaign. So not every e-commerce store should set up a dynamic search campaign, believe it or not. I personally believe there's only two types of different categories of stores which should set up a dynamic search campaign. Category number one, this type of e-commerce store is an e-commerce store which has already over 50 sales from Google Ads directly. So it doesn't matter if it's from one campaign or 100 different campaigns, as long as your Google Ads account has over 50 sales, then a dynamic search campaign is for you. And we will see why very shortly. But with a dynamic search campaign, you can either do retargeting to it or you can do cold traffic audiences to that campaign. And of course, if you're trying to really boost your sales, you should be doing both. But cold traffic is where you want to be. And in order for a dynamic search campaign and cold traffic to work properly, you do need to have some kind of sales data previously that you can then use to feed your dynamic search campaign. Now, the second type of store that should be utilizing dynamic search campaign would be the store with multiple different collections. And in this type of store, you should not just have one product with one collection, because in that case, a normal search campaign would be the best for you. But if you have multiple collections, even if you don't have that specific amount of sales, then that is something that is fine in terms of dynamic search campaigns. You can go ahead and give dynamic search campaigns a try. But ideally, you want to be within one of these two categories in order to really find some kind of success with dynamic search campaigns. And the account that I was showing you, this one specifically, found a lot of success with dynamic search campaigns, because if we look at the all-time data for this brand, we can see that this brand has been getting a lot of sales since July of 2021. So it's almost been 1 year this store has been active, and this store has been really crushing it with Google Ads. So that's why dynamic search campaigns would be ideal for a brand like this. But otherwise, if you're not really part of these two categories, I recommend a normal search campaign. Just get to this level where you're either at 50 plus sales or you have multiple different collections if you're like a one product store right now, and then give dynamic search campaigns a try. But now let's start talking about exactly how to set up a dynamic search campaign. Setting up a dynamic search campaign is extremely simple, and here's exactly how the process works. So from your campaigns overview page right over here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna click this plus button on the left side of the screen, and we're gonna click a new campaign because we wanna go ahead and create a brand new search campaign. In this case, what we're gonna do is we're gonna choose sales, because our main objective is sales. Unless you're like a service business, then you would do leads. Otherwise, we're gonna do sales. We're gonna come down and we're gonna make sure only one conversion goal is chosen, and that too, your purchase conversion goal or your leads conversion goal, if that's what you wanna be optimizing for. In this case, we only want to optimize for sales, so we're going to choose purchase and we're going to hit continue. Now here, what you want to do is you want to click the first box which says search, because we will be creating a dynamic search campaign, and just check the website visits box right over here, but don't enter anything right here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to name a DSA for dynamic search ad, and we're going to add a little dash because I like to know what country I'm targeting. So in this case, we're going to do USA only. And by the way, for dynamic search campaigns, I do recommend that you only target one country per campaign. It should be the base criteria for every single campaign that you start. Just target one specific country. And after your country, I like to specifically put the date. So today is May 10th when I'm recording this video. So we're just gonna put 5/10/22, and let's move on to the next part of this dynamic search campaign. Now, budget and bidding, extremely important. For the budget for a dynamic search campaign, I don't recommend anything less than $50 a day, and here's exactly why. As I mentioned earlier, a dynamic search campaign is basically shown to both cold traffic as well as hot traffic, unless you want to only make a retargeting campaign your dynamic search campaign. In that case, you can start at a $20 or even a $10 a day budget. But if your main goal is to get cold traffic as well as hot traffic on your website again, then you want to be starting at $50 a day or more, because if you have multiple collections like a normal e-commerce store owner, then it's going to be a bit of time before your Google search campaign can really get the right kind of data, can really start optimizing for your different collections. Because remember, you have 4 different collections, but then you may have tens and hundreds and even thousands and thousands of products within each collection. And if you start this dynamic search campaign at a $20 or $25 a day budget, there's no way it's going to be able to test all of those thousands of products and 4 or 5 collections all together. So that's why a $50 a day budget or more is ideal for a dynamic search campaign targeting both warm as well as cold traffic. Let's move on now to bidding. Now, with bidding, this is why you need to be categorized within one of those 2 specific categories of stores, which I was mentioning earlier. Number 1 category, again, if you have over 50 conversions or not on your Google Ads account. Number 2 category, if you don't really match the first criteria, but you have a lot of collections on your website. So one of those 2 categories. And the bidding is determined based on which category you fall under. So if you fall under the first category where you already have over 50 sales, you're already doing well with Google, you want to go ahead and choose conversions or conversion value as your bidding strategy. Now, I recommend conversions because I would rather get more sales than just overall more revenue, but that's my personal preference. You can find a lot of success with conversion value. Now, for the actual target CPA, for a smart shopping, and if you haven't already watched my video on how to set up smart shopping, go ahead and watch one of my videos that I recently released. But for smart shopping, I would naturally leave this box unchecked. But for a dynamic search campaign, you do want to leave this checked, because otherwise your dynamic search campaign is probably gonna go crazy. And in this case, for the target CPA, you want to be about $5 to $10, maybe even $20 up or down based on your current average CPA. So let's say you have 50 conversions in total for your Google Ads account, and Google is telling you that on average for your entire account, besides maybe your branded search campaign, your average CPA is around $50. Maybe you want to set the target CPA to $55 or $60 or even $70 in this case, just to give a little bit of wiggle room for your dynamic search campaign. On the other hand, if you're on a limited budget, maybe you want to do $45, and worst case scenario, do $40, but don't do anything below $10 difference if you're going down for the dynamic search campaign. Otherwise, it's not going to really be effective at all. But let's say you're not in category 1, you're in category 2, where your business doesn't really have over 50 sales with Google Ads specifically. You might be scaling with other ad platforms, but with Google, you don't really have 50 sales or above. In this case, what you would probably be better off optimizing for clicks instead. And if you optimize for clicks, it'll be going to maximize clicks as the bidding option. Here, I do recommend that you set a maximum CPC bid limit. And in this case, you would probably be better off doing a bid limit of anywhere between 30 cents to 40 cents. Don't overdo it in terms of bidding, because otherwise the campaign might end up spending way too much money. So start at 30 to 40 cents. If it doesn't spend the entire budget, if it's not spending any money at all, in that case, you would want to then go ahead and increase your bids by 5 cents until it starts to spend money and until it starts to fully spend your budget. Otherwise, keep on increasing the bids by 5 cents. But for the sake of this example, we're gonna go back to target CPA. So in this case, what we're gonna pretend is that our average CPA for the account is $50. So we're just gonna put it at 55 for this account, and we're gonna move on. So for more settings, don't touch anything here, leave it as it is. But now we click next, and now this is where you choose the specific networks. I like to uncheck the second box and only leave the first box checked. That's again my personal preference. Some people like to uncheck both of these. I personally prefer to choose search networks because I've gotten a lot of sales from search networks. Location, again, only one country, and move down to location options. We're gonna choose the second circle right over here under target, because we don't want to target people traveling within the US. We want to only target people living within the US. So once you do that, now scroll down, and here is the important step you need to take in order to change this from a regular search campaign into a dynamic search campaign. So right here where it says dynamic search ad settings, we want to choose that, and now you want to enter your store's URL. In this case, we're going to pretend we own google.com. So what we're going to do is we're just going to write in Google, and that's literally all you have to do right over here. Make sure English is chosen right here. And for targeting source, just leave it on the first circle. You don't have to change anything there. Now, once you choose that, just uncheck that box and now move to audience segments. this is where you can go ahead and add any of those retargeting audiences that you would like. You can just go to browse your combined audience segments, or maybe how they have interacted with your business. Either of these can work. I like to go with the first option. And then here you can target website visitors, or you can target similar segments and so forth. So this is where you get to choose your preferred audiences which you want to retarget to. Of course, I want to make sure my dynamic search campaign is extremely smart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all the converters, I'm going to add all the visitors to my website, and I'm gonna add all the shopping cart abandoners. That's exactly what I'm gonna add. I'm not gonna really touch any of these other ones because I want the rest of the budget going towards just basic cold audiences. So we're gonna choose that and we're gonna hit next. Now here is where we actually get to create our actual ad group. So here, as you can see, different kinds of categories came up, but we don't want to do anything within this first section right here, because what we want to do is we want to choose this specific circle right over here, and we're going to click the plus button next to specific web pages, because what we're going to do is we're going to create rules to target web page. And here is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to change this from URL to category. And once we do that, we're gonna actually select a category. As you can see, because I targeted google.com, I have a bunch of different categories here. If you targeted your specific store, you should see your categories right over here. And what you wanna do is you wanna choose a maximum of 3 to 5 different categories. No more and no less, just 3 to 5 different categories. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna target card games for the sake of this example, and we're gonna hit add. We're gonna hit on category again, and we're gonna hit another category. So let's say we wanna target children's and books. We're gonna hit add again, and now we're gonna target another third and final category. In this case, what we're gonna do is we're possibly gonna target pet shop. So there you go. Once you click add, your categories will be added on the right side. Again, no more than 3 to 5. I recommend this number because the other campaign that you saw running on my client's store under my agency, Euro Marketing, which if you're doing $30,000 or more in sales and you want to get similar results, but you want to outsource your Google ads, go onto my website at euromarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how I can help you and work with you to scale your e-commerce brand. But with that specific brand, we were only targeting 3 to 4 different categories. So again, no more than 3 to 5. Once you do that, just scroll down, and this is where you will see exactly what I was talking about earlier in terms of a dynamic headline and a dynamic description. So as you see right here, it says your final URL, your headline, and your display URL are both dynamically generated sources. So you don't have to worry about what kind of headline is chosen for that product, because only the product title will really be shown for the headline. The URL will be the link directly to that product itself, and it's basically whatever product people are actually searching for. That's why I love dynamic search campaigns, and they're so powerful. But for the description, now you do want to have like a generic description here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in really quick, and we're going to just assume that we are trying to sell 3D printers. And I'm going to come back really quick after I set up both of these two description columns. All right, so I went in and I created description number 1 and description number 2. And here's exactly why it's better if you have some kind of specific collections. Ideally collections which are kind of similar to each other, so it might be a bit more difficult for you to come up with these descriptions if you're like a general store. However, it still works. The other e-commerce brand you saw was actually more of a general store, but for the sake of this, what we assumed was we were selling 3D printers. So I said, shop our wide range of premium 3D printers designed for ease of use and efficiency. Perfect for that avid 3D art maker, over 10,303 models, and join over 47,919 happy customers. So we're directly telling them what we sell, that our products are premium, and basically what their main functions are and how they make a customer's life easier. In addition, we're adding a little bit of a trust boosting factor. So we say we have over 47,000 happy customers. All of these are basic generic things which you need to be doing for your dynamic search campaigns. Again, if you're like a general store with a wide range of different collections, or you're just a niche store that sells a lot of products very different from each other, you want to keep this very, very broad. Otherwise, it might seem a bit off for the people, and that can directly influence your quality score in a negative way. So you want to make sure, again, to keep it very broad depending on what niche you're in and what kind of products you sell. But that's pretty much it to dynamic search campaigns. Once you have done that, make sure everything is properly set up and just click next, because now on this page you get to choose all your sorts of extensions that you want to add for your dynamic search campaign. Here is exactly what I recommend. I recommend you add site link extensions. I recommend you add color extensions, and I recommend you add image extensions. Those are the three main ones you should probably have. Call extensions, it's optional. If you offer phone number direct customer service, then you might want to offer that. Otherwise, these other three are the main ones you should have. And you can also add more extensions if you would like. It's really unnecessary in my opinion. Just these three alone can do the trick. But once you do that, click next. And here you can just review all of your campaign settings to ensure everything is properly set up. And once you hit publish campaign, it will take about 24 hours, maybe even up to 48 hours for your dynamic search campaign to be fully approved. Otherwise, you are good to go. But hold on, we're not done yet, because just launching a dynamic search campaign is the easy part. Next step is to actually let it run, let it optimize, and figure out what to do based on the results that you're getting. Because after this, you will either get good results or you'll get bad results. And there's no kind of in between for a dynamic search campaign, just because of the sheer fact that you target so many different collections with a dynamic search campaign. So key pointer number one, you want to give about 5 to 7 days for your dynamic search campaign to really start running, really start getting you data. And don't panic if it's spending money unnecessarily. This is part of the data attribution process. This is part of the data gathering process. You can't get a lot of sales with a dynamic search campaign without actually letting it understand your audience, without it actually letting it go out and see what kind of people interact with your audience directly. Again, those remarketing audiences can really help in this case. If you're worried about having a low ROAS, or if you're on a low budget, make sure to add those remarketing audiences. But ideally, after you launch this campaign, definitely give it about 5 to 7 days for it to run properly and for it to kind of show you what direction it's going in. It could be a good direction or it could be a bad direction. After these 5 to 7 days, then make your judgments and your decisions, whether you want to continue it, whether you want to shut it off, etc. Now, let's say that the dynamic search campaign is spending your budget fully and is actually getting you good results. Now, the next step is for you to actually start increasing the budgets. You want to go into the scaling phase for this dynamic search campaign about 5 to 7 days. And you want to watch my video on how to scale your Google Ads campaigns to kind of apply the same techniques. The techniques say the same for shopping and search. It doesn't really matter. But if it's doing well, definitely increase the budget. And if it stops spending the full budget, then you want to look into increasing the bid. So that's kind of one way to troubleshoot the campaign. If it's not spending your entire budget, that's probably because you set too low of a target CPA, or your bid, if you decided to do bidding for it, is too low. So you want to go ahead and bid a little bit extra for that. And the third and final key pointer I have for you is if you don't want to really launch your dynamic search campaigns to a cold traffic, or you launched it and you're just not getting good results after those 7 to maybe even 14 days, then you have the option of just excluding cold traffic completely and changing that dynamic search campaign to only targeting your remarketing audiences. That way you can directly target your visitors, your cart abandoners, etc. over and over again for those individual products which they continuously search for on Google. That's one way to go about with the dynamic search campaign if it ends up failing. But that's pretty much it for a dynamic search campaign. Again, you want to keep things very simple. Don't overcomplicate it, because otherwise it's going to have all sorts of these little things that you don't really need to be doing. You want to keep things simple until it starts to show you positive and consistent results. Only then should you go a bit deeper. But again, if you want to outsource your Google Ads, if you need help scaling your Google Ads brand to the next level, and you're already doing about $30,000 or more in sales as of right now, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how I can personally help you scale your e-commerce brand to the next level. But if you found any type of value in this video, destroy the like button and destroy that subscribe button, and I will see you in my next video.